welcome, everyone. Welcome to a new edition of Remixing Politics and Culture with me, your host, Pam. I am a public relations and marketing professional with a passion for social justice, voter advocacy, and culture. And tonight, we're going to have a very interesting conversation. In fact, one of my guests actually suggested the title and the topic, which is the intersectionality of the pandemic, police, protest, and politics. Tonight is a takeover of the men. Because I so often have women on the show, and listen, I'm open to any and everybody. So you see the crawl across the screen of where to email if you'd like to be a special guest, and to please subscribe to my YouTube channel and like the videos. And I would love for you to come on the show. Okay, so I am going to introduce you first to my first guest. And let me bring him up. There he is. Okay. This is Terrence Perry. He is a 15-time published author, servant leader, racial justice social advocate, as well as a life mastery coach. He has over 37 years of working in the area of health and human services related endeavors, 37 years of experience in that area. Terrence continues to advocate for underserved communities, particularly those in recovery and those attempting to reenter society after incarceration. He not only talks the talk, but he walks the walk. Terrence has overcome many obstacles in his personal and professional life. He's a perfect example of what helping others looks like. And my other guest, Terry Allen, I don't see Terry just yet. And but we're going to keep on going. Welcome, Terrence, to the show.
Thanks for having me, Pam. How you doing this evening?
I'm doing well. I'm so happy to have you on. You are a man of many, many talents. And when Terry gets here, we'll introduce him. He told me a little bit ago that he was signing on, but I don't see him yet. Okay, so this topic of intersectionality of politics. Well, I think politics first, but police, the protests, the pandemic, and all of that. That's as I was doing some research for the show, that's really nothing. It's not new. We've actually have experienced a similar experience like this before, not in our lifetime, but 100 years ago. At the tail end of 1918, there was that horrible flu pandemic that people talked about when this pandemic came around, and it wiped out thousands of Americans and what have you. And then in 1919, that was known as the Red Summer, and it particularly impacted Chicago, Washington, D.C., and a town known as, Elaine, Arkansas, if you can believe that. And the Red Summer all started in Chicago, Illinois, when a young boy mistakenly integrated a beach that was not for him. And a racist mob stoned him to death, and he drowned. And that just caused all kinds of mayhem and what have you. So it's so interesting how 100 years later, we had something just as horrific, like a modern day lynching that we all saw because of a brave young lady with a cell phone. So what were you, I gave you that whole background to you and the audience so that you could tell me what you were thinking of when you came up with that idea and title.
Well, Pam, at the time I had written a book. I wrote a book actually about that title. But before then, in 2016, well, actually in 2015, I had wrote a book, but it was based on what was going on in 2012 when Trayvon Martin, when he was killed, and then Eric Gardner, and then they started the Black Lives Matter movement. So I wrote a book then, and I thought, and it was along the lines of the same topic, without the pandemic piece, but with the piece with the police brutality and the racial justice advocacy and social justice stuff that was going on. Then the case with Colin Kaepernick had came on when he kneeled, doing the football. So I had wrote that book, and then this happened, and to me it was like it actually didn't stop. It was just, this is actually just a part two of what was going on then. So I ended up writing a book about the pandemic, the protest, the police and the politics, because that's what I had been seeing all the time. And then when the pandemic hit, then it really came, everything started coming to light, not just to my eyes, but to the eyes of, America and internationally. Everybody started seeing it and understanding it, all, across all the, the racial lines, all the age groups. Pandemic brought everything, like I said, in 2020, it brought it to light.
Yeah.
More so than in the past.
Definitely more so than in the past. It has been a very peculiar time. 2020 has been just so strange. So strange. Listen, before we get in further, let me introduce Terry. Terry has some connection issues, everyone. So I got to introduce my other guest. I see him here. All right. Hold on. There he is. Terry? Oh, your pitch. Oh, there you are. There you are, Terry. Okay. So we've got Terry Allen in the house now. Okay. Terry Allen is an award-winning public relations and marketing leader. He is the principal of 1016 Media and the vice president of Focus Communications. He is the managing director of City Men Cook, a major fundraising charity event that he's been doing for over 23 years. He's the chair of the NABJ Media Related Task Force, and yours truly is his co-chair. Terry is known in so many circles and is legendary in the field of professional communications. I just learned after all of these years of knowing Terry that he has played a huge role in the area of the formerly incarcerated people reentering society. So, and that's something that Terrence also has in common with him. So welcome, Terry, back to the show. I'm so glad you got your connection going.
I know. You never know in Texas, the weather changes so quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, Terrence had just started with us. We started in talking about the pandemic and protests and what have you, and how he came up with the the title for this show today. And I wanted to and we were starting off with Terrence, but I want to ask you, Terry, I don't know if you were able to hear what Terrence's responses were or whatever, but
Terrence will enlighten me. Go ahead.
Yeah. So listen, for you, Terry, the murder of George Floyd went literally global. I mean, I think that blew all of our minds, how something like that happened in Minnesota went globally. Absolutely global outrage about the oppression of Black and brown people. So many people all over the globe recognize themselves in George Floyd. So Terry, I'm curious, how did you cope during that time? How did you respond to the crisis?
I serve other people. So as a servant leader, you have to be available and you have to figure out passageways, and you have to do that. But let me just say this, the George Floyd moment happened because we had a pandemic. So if we didn't have that pandemic, George Floyd moment would have happened 27 times more, which it did, 23 times after he was done. People have died in police custody. It would have happened and no one would have known. I'm reminded of what Will Smith says, racism didn't start yesterday. We just got cell phones. And so I am a extrovert. So I'm a recovering extrovert with introvert tendencies because of the pandemic. You know, I just got to the point where I'm used to putting people together because it's through people that I create changes. And at this point, the George Floyd was a moment. And we're still trying to figure out how we take this moment and make it a movement. The momentum has to have a process. And when we look at how they tried to vilify George Floyd because of his criminal background, because of his racial makeup, we still have issues that are out there. And so as the pandemic came, shelter at home, I had some high level increased productivity, but also increased mental health and anxiety at the same time.
Yes. I think we all did. Terrence, for you, how did you cope when the George Floyd incident happened?
Well, I mean, like I said, we were sheltering in place. So that gave me plenty of time. I think I wrote 4 books during that time. And that birthed the book that we're talking about today. You know, the approach, because we had to be sheltered at home, and a lot. We were sitting in front of the TV a lot.
Yeah.
So I was watching a lot of what was going on the different news channels and in TV, and then just what was going on in our city itself and other cities around the world that we were seeing, that had started the protesting. But it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't new. And the only thing different is that we were sheltering in place. So everybody, had been sheltered. Even the kids were home from school.
Yeah.
And actually, part of the protesting, I think, started because people were just simply tired of sitting at home. They needed to get out. Even though we were being told not to go out because of the pandemic and, so forth, people were ready to get out the house. So the pandemic, so the protesting gave us opportune times to get out the house for a cause. We got a cause we got to fight for, and it's worth getting out in front of that pandemic to fight for it. So we saw, all different races and generations out protesting.
Well, we saw a lot of Caucasian young people out in mass. We saw a lot of that, of which I think Ron DeSantis would say that they were too woke, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Right? They were too woke, and he doesn't like that at all. So here in North Carolina, I have to say that I failed to say that Terrence is in North Carolina and Terry is in big old Texas. He's in Dallas, and Dallas has many, many issues, as we well know. But North Carolina just passed an anti-violent rioting bill, and our governor, who is a Democrat, he did, when it came up before, and maybe some of the language has changed in the bill, he vetoed the bill. This time it has passed. Now, my only question about something like that, and because I don't believe in rioting, we don't believe in rioting, right? We believe in peaceful protest. However, when there was literal shots of people that were in disguise with the George Floyd protests that were setting fires to buildings, defacing property and whatnot. And that was not what the peaceful protest was about, to damage property, correct? So I was thinking that with these new bills being passed, I don't believe we don't want our First Amendment rights taken from us. But what would happen if you got roughed up by a cop? Okay. And so if you're getting roughed up by a cop, you're going to push back, right? I would think so. Yeah. You would push back. So what do you, so if you push back from the police, then are you being violent? Could you then be? Who wants to answer that?
Well, I think you're dealing with two different normals. Pam, I think you're dealing with two different normals. I worked in my first program to help people go in business with men coming out of prison. But what I had to teach young people today that I have to teach, and it's the same story. It's no different stories. It's a story my uncle told me, my grandfather told him, my great-grandmother told my grandfather, my great-great-grandfather told my grandmother. And it was all a conversation about getting home safe. People of color have those conversations. It's about getting a receipt when you go into a store and coming out of that store with your package and then opening your stuff. My son didn't listen one day. He bought a Coke on the 4th floor. On the 2nd floor, he started drinking it. On the 2nd floor, they wanted to arrest him for stealing. But he had bought it and didn't even keep the receipt. And so getting back to what you're saying is we have to realize the normal that we're in. This normal is no different than post-Jim Crow, post-Reconstruction. When you are stopped by the police, you are no longer normal. Your skin color is a weapon. If you reach for something, it's going to be perceived as predatory. If you say, why are you stopping me? If you question the logic of why you're being stopped, you're going to be seen as resistant. Okay, resisting arrest. You're going to be seen as combative. So I tell young people all the time, be able to tell your story after you've been stopped. So when you're stopped, let your car windows down. Turn all your lights on the inside. If you have stuff in the glove compartment that will prove insurance or your car, ownership of car, whatever proof documents you have, make sure you place them in the dashboard before the police officer gets to the car. If any time that during that process that you have to reach in to get something, you let them reach and get it for you, even if it's in your pocket. And so at this point, you're not perceived as normal. Give up that normal. I was looking at the Tyree Nichols video, and he says, why are y'all doing this to me? He was having a normal conversation with people who were not treating him as a racial weapon or a retaliatory weapon because he tried to resist or tried to say this is not normal. There's no normal when you're being stopped by law officers. You've got to know that you've got to play the game and survive the stop.
Survive the stop.
You get to report them later. Yeah, you get to report them later. You can report them later. You can write them up. You can do your internal affairs report. You can get us, all us members of the NAACP and everything else I'm a member of out there with you later. But right now, you are a weapon. Treat yourself as a non-dangerous entity.
Terrence, what do you say about that?
Well, let me back up first and say, when you said that we do believe in protesting, but not rioting. So now I do actually believe in protesting, nonviolent protesting, but I am not against people that riot, because I understand the process of change. All of this have to take place. We do what we do, they do what they do. If some people riot and that's what they do, that gets noticed too, and it brings about change. Would I riot? No. But I understand the people that do and what they're going through and what that does for the bigger picture. I'm a protester. I'm a nonviolent protester, and that's what I would do. But I don't knock people that are riot and do, because when you're talking about change and revolution, it takes all of that. So I just say that to say I don't condone it, but I understand it, and I'm not necessarily against it. All I say is, don't riot in your own neighborhood and tear your own neighborhood down. Don't tear the neighborhoods down. Don't tear the neighborhoods down of the people that got their foot on your neck, that's holding you down.
But that's what always happens, is that the neighborhood that you live in gets destroyed, and it's horrible. I mean, I grew up in Detroit, and I was a little kid when the '67 riots came through, and it decimated the city. I mean, it was horrible. And
horrible bring about change. Change is not beautiful, and it's not nice, and it's not easy, it's not comfortable, and it disrupts everything. And that's a good thing, because sometimes normal protesting in and of itself is not going to change anything. I'd rather boycott. If I had to do one, I would rather boycott.
See, but see, boycotting makes sense because that's what King did. And that's because one thing everybody understands, black, white, green, or purple, is money. And when you will start affecting their pocketbook, that's when you get their attention. And I think that that's the thing that, it's too bad that we didn't do more of that when Colin was kneeling and stuff. We probably needed to boycott football.
Well, when
we would have gotten along, how things may have changed then.
Not just football, but when Colin Kaepernick sat there, he was 4 years, I guess, ahead of his time, because when you look at the way things had played out, Colin Kaepernick and how everybody was so against what he was doing and all the powers that be, then, they didn't want to come out and stand for what he was saying. But 4 years later, when Derek Chauvin had his knee on George Floyd's neck, and then the athletes of not just football, but all the athletes and the celebrities and so forth, everybody came out speaking then. Even the coaches that didn't speak up when Colin Kaepernick kneeled. But then when this happened with George Floyd, hey, everybody had something to say and wanted to take a stand then. So, when you look back, it makes you look kind of silly then, because even just 4 years difference in how everything played out.
Right. Well, listen.
Well, I want to enhance that. There's a difference between rioting and protest. There's a difference between destroying a neighborhood and expressing anger. All right, we expressed anger during the LA riots. We expressed anger during Detroit. But you saw what happened to the people who were there. We suffered from that. And the biggest challenge is, and I've said this over and over again, our situation is economic. It always has been. So if we want to learn from something, we've got to do a little Sankofa. We got to look backwards to get forward. And so we learned from the Birmingham bus boycott that we had an economic ecosystem that could have survived. And when they asked us to get back on the bus, we should have said, no, we're good. We're working. And so we have to learn our lesson. It goes back to what Anthony Browder said when he said, stolen legacies. Our culture, our racial culture, has forgotten their memory. We've let our names go. We don't even know our names. We have surrendered our way of life, our culture of where we come from. Although the food system in America, the restaurant system in America, the money system in America, the pharmaceutical system in America is completely African. But we don't know we're tied to it. We have overall loss of memory of who we are. And few of us can tell our story past slavery. We have created false memories of white people and given them more serendipity than they deserve, because slavery was horrendous. Okay, we lost our land. We've lost our ability to be wealth builders. We are now consumers. So we have to restore our memory and know that when we protest, and at the time when we took down the boycott in Birmingham, that bus boycott took down the ecosystems. They didn't let us sit in front of the bus because we were angry. Let us sit in front of the bus because they were about to go bankrupt. Okay, and when we realized that, we just said, we good. We're not coming back. Let's get these limos going. Let's get this process going. Let's own our own. But if you don't have that cultural memory, which was taken from us systemically over a 400-year period, we will go out and bust out the windows in our Detroit neighborhoods, the windows in our LA neighborhoods, and not really understand that we need to come back. Right now, someone says, how do you know we have woke up? When we talk about this word woke, Pam. We wake up, and I'm not discounting where I get my hair care products. So I'm proud of anybody that does it. But if I have to, the only people that sell Black-owned hair care products don't even look like us, and we will go to them before we go to us, and not even blink a word. The only thing we do in our culture that we own is food and barbershops and salons. And don't get me wrong, there is the people that come through Black enterprise, all of this entrepreneurship. But our battle, our war, we got to quit focusing on the little victories and stay at the larger battle. Our battle is economic. Once we have economic power, then nothing concedes demand without power. And so we need that power.
Right. That's absolutely right. I feel anyway. Terrence, So, what is your suggestion? Well, I tell you what. Let's start talking about the reentry process of those of so many of our Black men we know are incarcerated. Right.
Right.
That's a sad and troublesome fact. Both
disproportionately incarcerated.
Disproportionately. And both of you, and Terry, you blew me away, because as long as I've known you, I did not know about the millions of dollars in grant money that you had to do your reentry programs and went to the White House for 3 times. Terrence,
Yeah.
on the other hand, his situation, I believe, is a lot more grassroots. And Terrence, I want you to talk about this whole reentry thing, because I get the feeling from what you were saying that you understood the rioters is because you're thinking of these brothers that you've been helping along the way with reentry. But you have the floor to talk about your reentry program in North Carolina and what you're doing.
Okay. Well, first of all, don't connect the rioting to what we're talking about in reentry, because the rioting piece, like I said, talking about rioting, I'm just saying I understand that and just thinking about change. But if we talk about reentry, well, what we're doing now is with the local reentry councils, we're putting those local reentry councils together in every city. And so what that does is, when a person is not just coming out of prison, but actually when they go in, we want to start the process then of preparing them for coming out. That means we want to put those pieces in place. Resources and everything need to be in place, so when they are coming out, they don't have to figure, you don't have to figure this thing out. You don't have to fall in between the gaps of like housing, employment, other supportive services, mental health services, and so forth and so on. We want to have those pieces already in place. So it starts with case management on the inside, and that person on the outside that's working in some type of case management, whether it be field support, mentoring, and so forth. So that, because the recidivism rate is so high because those resources hadn't been in place.
Right.
So we put those resources in place in every city, and let's say in North Carolina, that's 100 counties. So,
right.
So if we got a LRC, a local reentry counselor in every county, that means when a person is coming out of prison, then he's not coming out without any resources already being set up for him. Now this don't happen naturally. We're making it happen now. We're getting it in place now. We got it in Raleigh. They have a large local reentry council in Raleigh, and Raleigh is helping some of the other smaller cities get theirs going. They may have been doing it in Texas, but here in North Carolina, it's just beginning to happen, like you said, at the grassroots level. A lot of these councils is just understanding you got to have a grant writer to write the grant to get that funding piece in place.
Right.
And then what we do, what I do in particular, is connect with those resources out there, whether it be the housing resources, the mental health. A lot of guys, they may get some mental health in prison, but once they leave the services, they cut the services off. So a person leaves, they may have been getting medication on the inside, but then on the outside, they may not get it. And they may not even be thinking about it because they're thinking about trying to find a job, trying to find housing, and
trying to survive.
But their mentality it's deteriorating because they're not taking their medication if they're supposed to be. Because a lot of guys in prison do have some type of mental health disorder, whether it be schizoaffective disorder, substance abuse, some type, and the medication helps keep them, keep their mind stable. But if they're not getting that, and then because they're busy worried about housing, so forth and so on, they fall through the crack, and they the ones that usually come right back in the, in the system. They only got about what, 9 months? Okay, you on probation, parole for that for 9 months. Usually, and then within that 9-month process, if you haven't gotten a job or got your housing stuff, 9 times out of 10, you're gonna relapse back into, you know, that criminal activity that got you locked up in the first place, and you're gonna be right back in the system again. So what we're trying to do is to alleviate that, so it won't disrupt the community, it won't disrupt the household, and it won't disrupt, you know, the job piece. One of the things we're doing with the job pieces is making sure employers understand about the work opportunity tax credit that they get. They get a tax credit for hiring, you know, ex-felons and those that's coming out.
Right.
So that in and of itself is an incentive for the employer.
For some,
those that want to participate.
Yeah.
Those that want to participate. Everybody's not going to participate, but we're just looking to give second chances.
Right.
Everybody's not looking to give a second chance.
That's true. That's true. Terry, I know when we talked, you talked about the program that you used to operate, and you had lots of grant money and what have you. Tell us about it. And also too, you had a certain level of offender that you all dealt with. You didn't deal with just everyone. Everyone wasn't.
When it comes to the things that Terrence is talking about, the coalitions or the collaborations are necessary. He won't be able to help those certain people, either murderers, child molesters, people who are, if they get out, they're not going to be supported. None of the councils are. Let me be real clear that our program was grassroots. We started out with a $500. And because we had been associated with and been dealt around people who were incarcerated in our families, in our neighborhoods, and they couldn't get jobs. So let's be real clear. You can't get nothing when you come out of prison except an ID. All right. So all of what we did here in Texas happened across the country because we had to go to Chicago, we had to go to DC, and we ended up in the Bay Area putting together this program. But when you are an back then we liked a soft word like formerly incarcerated person. But nobody taught you like that. When you're an ex-felon, you can't get an apartment, you can't get a job, you can't click the box and say you wasn't. No one's going to hire you. So we had to deal with working with people before they come out. And we identified people that had criminal backgrounds that may have been questionable because of the imbalance in sentencing among Black men. We had to deal with the people who had felonies for child support. Drug problems, aggravated things that nothing that dealt with the damage to another human life, whether it was murder, child abuse, aggravated assault. And so we put that program together, but we didn't have any grants. What we did was we went on our own initiatives and found that we had to go in and counsel these people. It was a faith-filled effort in the beginning. And we had, you know, one of the first presentations I do with the young men in prison. How many of y'all innocent? And the ones that raise their hand, we're in the wrong room. I only want to deal with the guilty. All right, because I need you to be accountable for what you've done. And I need you to be accountable that even if you're not guilty of the crime that you didn't commit, you're guilty enough to be put in jail for it. So I need you to be accountable. And once we did that accountability, we set up a system where you're not going to go. Reason we had, you know, recidivism is 80% or more. Our recidivism was 1%. We had one person go back to jail. But we set up a system where you know, and this is not a new model. We modeled after Delancey Street and other models, but you didn't get to hang out with homeboys when you got out because they're the ones that help you get in here. And you didn't get to call mama because she may have been pacifying your behavior so that you could be, oh, my baby wouldn't do that. That's why you in prison. Okay. And so you don't get to see those people that were part of your network before you were sentenced. You won't see them until you come full circle, and it's almost like a 12-step program. You know, I've been sober for 4 days. You're gonna be crime free for 12 months before we let you get back to that neighborhood and those people. And we went into the prison system and did workshops. We also identified behavioral skills. It is about accountability and ownership. And once they got out of the program, I got out of prison on their release date, we also told them 2 weeks before you get released, shut your mouth. Because there's some lifers in there who ain't gonna get out, and they will make your life hell so that you don't get out on your appointed date. They're gonna do something to keep you in a little bit longer. So we set up a system where people understood they had a pathway, they had a network, and then the mentoring program was in place. And we went to all these councils. We found everybody who's getting money from ex-offenders or prisoners wasn't even touching them. Half the people say, oh, we helped them get their ID. We helped them get housing. When I go in and talk to these people in prison, have you heard from the Purify program? What's that? They go, what's that? That's the people say that they're getting $500,000 a year to help you. Well, we ain't seen them. I said, okay, thanks. So we put together a town hall and put all these people say, I'm helping formerly incarcerated people. All right, show us who you help. Because I got 55 men sitting on that stage and they never heard of me. And then we put in a system where you create a new world when you come out. You have to be accountable to the pastors, the deacons, the church, the neighborhood you're in, the community. You don't have any free time. There ain't no free time in this program until your behavior has changed. And people always talk about we need funding, we need grants. No, you need attitude. Because when Crowman built fire, he didn't have a grant. He just had 2 rocks to rub together. And so once you get that attitude of change and responsibility, every man in this planet has skills. All of them got skills. Everybody got skills. We found people could repair computers at that time, repair VCRs. And when you start your own business, no one's going to look at your criminal record. They're going to look at your business record. And so we got to partner with people to house them because they couldn't, with a felony, you couldn't rent an apartment. You can't do it now, and no state. And so you had to be part of a program. And Pam, you heard my story about Brother Preshon going home because he got his bank loan.
Tell the audience the story about Brother Preshon. You'd enjoyed this, Terrence.
He graduated from my program, went through the process, and his family that we separated from, he had believed in his family. They finally started believing in him because he ruined their lives too with his criminal background. But he had a business plan. He graduated our program. He had his talking points. He knew how to financial spreadsheet. He knew how to, and so they believed in him and they were supporting his restaurant. Come on back to Louisiana. We got you. And so he decided he would not stay in Texas and he would go to Louisiana. Now, I didn't get permission to tell the story, so I hope he's going to forgive me. But he got a ride. He got a ride. I got a ride back. I'm on my way. Sometime between his destination city and while he was in the state, he got pulled over because the person he got a ride with was from his old neighborhood and the car was stolen. All right. And so in the middle of the night, 2 a.m., I think it was 2 a.m. in the morning. I have to check with Van and Ken on this story, but they went through the paperwork. They saw his business plan. They saw his graduation. They saw his journal about what he had learned, his remorse, how he was going to get back to the community. And the judge asked him, explain to me what you're doing. And he did his pitch because in our class, we teach you how to pitch your business. You got to get a customer. It's all about customers, not only just for you, but you got to think of hiring 5 other people to work for you so you can keep going out and getting the business. And he did that plan. And then he asked the other guy who stole the car, the judge asked him a question. He didn't have nothing to say. He was just guilty as ever. And the judge says, I'm going to let you move forward. You open that restaurant and I'll come eat there. And he turned to the guy that was the driver. You know where you're going, right? That's just what he said. And the judge purchased that bus ticket for him to go. And that restaurant has been thriving ever since.
That's one of those hallelujah, praise the Lord stories. I'm so glad. Is he still in business now, Terry?
I think that he's at a retirement level, but he's on Facebook. He hits me when he has recipes. He comes to my event, City Men Cook with the year. And but I'm just saying it is not about whether we have councils. It is about empowering people. Our program was called Power, preparing our workforce with empowered reentry. When you have the empowerment, it ain't about a council or a group of people going to help you. It's about you having the fortitude, the skill set, and the pitch to get out there and deliver something. Because when you solve someone's problem, they don't care where you came from. They care that you solved the problem.
Mm. Maybe you know what? Maybe that's the answer, that for some of these ex-offenders, instead of looking for a job so much, a job and teaching entrepreneurship, maybe
Yep.
that maybe that's the bigger answer. What you think, Terrence?
We
Oh, for
live in a
sure.
digital age. Of course it is. We live in a digital age. We live in an age of information and visibility.
Mm-hmm.
So most of us can get a side hustle. And I tell young people today, you working for someone, keep your 9 to 5 and let
Mm-hmm.
your hustles be 5 to 9 until your 5 to 9 can become your 9 to 5.
Right. That's
Yeah.
right. That's right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's right.
Yeah. So Terrence, where's your show us your book that you wrote about this, that kind of gets into the gaps about what our subject matter was today.
The most recent book, or the book
The
I wrote a few years. The first book I wrote is America Ready to Heal. That was after, the situations with Trey Martin,
trade.
Trayvon Martin getting shot, and Eric Garner, and
Yeah.
from that point, I was writing after the fact, if
Mm-hmm.
America was ready to heal, and I was talking about um, part of the prison system stuff along those lines. This recent book, the recent book that I wrote is more about men and women that's coming out of prison, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and the mental health side of it, in terms of the effect that it has on the family
Mm-hmm.
and the community, and the individual themselves. Because when you go in prison and you coming out within that time frame, when you in prison, you got to be in this, survival mode to live in that jungle. And
Mm-hmm.
then when you coming out, then you got to readjust your mindset to living out, in the world, again. And it's going to be totally different than when you went in. So that mental adjustment that you have to make, that's a leap in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to be prepared, and you're going to need some leadership and guidance. And like you said, you got to have that want to-ness, to make that change, to make that happen.
How do we motivate young people now to make that leap? Because no matter, we've got to be real about our situation in our communities. It's not pretty. It's real ugly. And here I have two successful men on this platform. And Terrence, I know you have sons. Terry, I think you have a son, and if not, you've adopted some. How do you keep these young men on the straight and narrow path? Because they have so many temptations coming after them. Not that the girls don't as well, but we talk about women all the time. And as Edwin has politely told me, it's about time I had men on my show. So
Need some manpower up there.
yeah, I said that the men were taking over today. So you tell me, what do we do? Because we're just going to be in this loop cycle over and over again with the police, the pandemic, whatever. It is what it is. It's a certain mindset. And I think the big thing that we couldn't get over with the Tyre Nichols case was that there was just so many there were all Black men that killed him, and so that shows that there's something in the mindset of whoever wearing the gun or whatever. They just a power tripping or something. I don't know, guys.
Terrence, I'll let you touch that because I got plenty to say about it. Go ahead.
Yeah, the police department itself, the police department itself, like I said, we go back to the slave patrols when we're talking about slavery.
That's
we
what
can bring it all the way up. We can bring it all the way up to now, and it's still the same thing. The police don't have our best interests. It never did. It was always about the rich and powerful and taking care of their property and so forth. That hadn't changed. It's never been about justice. So the way the police system was even built, the departments that we have, you know, they're not built to protect the citizens. We got a class system here.
Mm-hmm.
And in that class system, the lower class have never been the protected class. Even during the pandemic, when we talk about the pandemic, you know, they still had to go, if they had a job, it's direct care type of work, or in, you know, the food industry, fast food or something. They still had to go. And, you know, so they still wasn't protected even then. A lot of people could stay home and work from home. You know, even the school teachers, you know, they started having, you know, the Zoom classes, you know, and so forth. But if you worked in the, you know, I guess the hotel industry and,
grocery stores, we really learned who people were who were frontline workers.
Well, they said essential.
Essential.
You know, you call them essential workers, and you praising them during the pandemic. Then a couple of years later, like now, then not. So a lot of them people didn't want to go back to work, and they wasn't taking those, you know, that little minimum wage. If you done praised me and said you really need me, and I seen during the pandemic that you did, now all of a sudden you're trying to drop me back down to a nobody. That's not happening. So a lot of people say no, that I'm not going back to that job, not for that wage. And a lot of people didn't go back to work and a lot of people just, you know, with that stress, everybody saw that the pandemic showed you who was who and who really needed, you know, you need me just as much as I need you. So we can have a standoff if we want to, but I ain't going back to work for $9, $8, you know, $7 an hour. You know, everybody say, hey, give up at least 15.
Yeah, but what can you do with 15 now with groceries and rent? I mean, even
with eggs costing $6 a carton.
Look at you see the game, you know.
Eggs $6 a carton.
Yeah, I know. And so I just want to address that thing about the 5 police officers in Memphis. And I'll address it because back again, we need to be cultural memory specialists. We need to restore memories. Malcolm X dealt with this already. And the first thing he did when those people beat up that black guy in LA, the first thing he opened with is, who taught you to hate yourself? Okay, and so across this country you go, but it was 5 black guys. Black is not a skin color. It's an experience. And just because they got the same skin color doesn't mean they have the same experience. So I'm sick and tired of hearing people say they were black too. There ain't no two in that. And once you have given up your life to the police system, Brother Terrence has talked about it already. The police system was a patrol and system, and the police system came out of Reconstruction. It was a racist system. It still is. Dr. Amos Wilson, when he came down to speak at our school when I was young, God rest his soul, he said the biggest gang in America is the police. And we have these, Pam and I have done these workshops, Project Unity workshops on racism and diversity. And we tell people all the time that if you allow the blue wall to allow bad police officers to move forward, then it makes the good police officer look bad. I am the descendant of the first Black police officer in Dallas. There's no way that I don't respect the police force. I don't like the way they allow bad to thrive, regardless of what color they are. Racism is not a color-based system. It is a system. And if you can undo, every time I hear people talk about, every time we see a George Floyd or a Rodney King, we need to do some training. Ain't nobody train you to deal with white people. So it's not about training, it's about racism and a systemic process in place. You can tell me that you feel good about me in great discussions, but if you don't dismantle the racist infrastructure, then I'm going to be rewarded by racism, and it's going to stay where it is. You know, and even now we use this word, the grandfather clause. And that's a racist behavior where it says, okay, you free now, but if your grandfather didn't vote, you couldn't vote. That's a system. And now we use that, because Pam and I were talking about it when we were looking at PR, how we grandfather ourselves into certification because we've got millions of years of experience. Well, I got to go take a test again. And we said, like, they need to grandfather me in, but we need to look at what the systemic racism is. You know, I have on my desk back here a sign taken from my grandfather's building for colored only. So I may have, he may have been surrounded by some good white folk, but he still couldn't drink from their fountain. So we have to undo the system as well. And so people say, oh, those are black police officers. No, they weren't. They were police officers who happened to be colored. Black is experiences and feeling. And you don't hate yourself when you love yourself. And being pro-black is not, the opposite of pro-black is anti-black. It ain't anti-white. I love me some white folks. Okay. Pro-black means I'm not anti-black. And pro-black, and we have too many anti-black folks in our culture that has set it up, that system. Our kids, you asked me what do kids need to do? I have an after-school program. The principal came up to me and says, what you doing in that classroom? I said, why you ask? I said, we have to force these kids to go to class on time. They show up in your classroom 30 minutes before you get here. I said, what do you mean? I said, well, because when I bring them in there, I tell them who they are. There's one guy that looks like Imhotep, the father of medicine. There's another guy that looks like King Tut. I tell them who he is. There's a woman in there that looks like one of the Dahomey warriors. So I tell them who they are. I said, these people lived 100,000 years ago. That you remind me of them. Look at what they accomplished. When you give people self-worth, then there won't be something. And kids will show up waiting for something else. And I had a youth program, my ex-offender program, I had 2 young teenagers. I ain't putting on no suit. That suit is white. That's white people. You know, I said, boy, are you crazy? That's a uniform. I said, this is what I have on there as a uniform. I was in church today. I was talking with them earlier today. And so we put the kids in uniforms, gave them office supplies. We prepped the building. We're going to have these young black men in here. They're going to be selling stuff that you use all the time, staplers, paper, whatever you need. They went in there and did their spiel after graduating our class. And the 4 black guys who said they didn't want a suit, the guys came back with how much money they made. The 4 black guys walked up to me and said, where's my suit? I need that suit. Give me a suit, give me a briefcase. You know, when you give people hope and respect, then they will achieve, and they won't be the kids that we have to worry about. But you have to show them their history. They need to know that they came from pharaohs, not plantations. Our plantation history was a short 400 years and a 5,000-year history. And if they don't know that history, and there's some of us who look just my age, Pam, they don't know either. And you know, we heard those stories. Some of my worst bosses have been colored. I don't say black, they're colored. So,
but you know what? To your point, Terry, of talking about history and whatnot, Terrence, many books as you've written, 15 so far, if they don't have stuff in there that DeSantis doesn't approve of, guess what? You can't have it in the teacher's library. You can't have it. It'll be on the book ban. You've got literary giants being censored and their books are banned and what have you. So that very good history that you're talking about that probably was going to be taught in the advanced placement African American studies courses, okay, now it's been watered down and modified so it doesn't have any real truth to it or whatever. So now what? Now what? That's why we cannot be sleep, y'all. We cannot. I'm taking my word woke back because I used to use it all the time. And then the Republicans started using it. And I just felt like mad. I didn't want to use it anymore. But they tried
to demonize it. But they did that. They did that with the word Negro. And you know, our original beginnings was negres. But they turned that into the N-word. So I'm not worried about them, Pam. We need to teach ourselves our own. Let them do what they need to do. They can go and change the laws. But if I can't find Maya Angelou's book in my high school, I should be able to find it in my church. I should have a 39 steps program. Back in the day, kids went to a 39 steps program. That's where you learn that it was you who made that syrup. It is you who made the sugar cane work. In Texas, we're from a cotton company. There's so many plantations in these neighborhoods that we grew up in, that we grew up on. And when you teach, we need to own our own education. And we need to tell our stories and control our narrative, no matter what's being said. And we got to quit playing these soft games. We hear words like disinformation. I tell young people there's no such thing. It's called a lie. Just keep it real. Disinformation is a soft
word. Not an alternative fact, parents. Not an alternative fact.
Right. Yeah, alternative fact, disinformation. And I love this whole thing about critical race theory.
Oh, please.
Hey, please. we have got to tell our own stories and make people accountable. And we can't even convince a group of Black folks that reparations is real. It is real. And gave everybody money back except Africans.
That's right. And you know what, Terrence? They I don't know if you heard about this. Now you, Terry, you done got us on reparations. San Francisco, they are really listen, they making
I'm moving to San Francisco.
in San Francisco about this reparations. However, let me tell you, the online pushback, some of those people are getting threatened and stuff because they're saying there wasn't no slavery in San Francisco. So they're saying if you weren't oppressed in San Francisco, we shouldn't be giving you nothing. You go to another state and go get your money. You better go to Mississippi and get your $5 million. But look, you ain't gonna get no $5 million because Brett Favre there, he gonna get it first. So
Pam, every culture in America has been compensated except the Black culture.
That's right.
You know, everybody's got
and rightfully so, the Japanese and stuff. But I guess they considered they've done something for the Native Americans, but not to me.
Well, they did. They get the casinos and no taxation. And all that, but the problem about reparations is not what the people who have the money that needs to be. That's not the problem. We have too many people look like us thinking we don't need it.
I don't. Okay. Do you think you need it, Terrence?
I want my 5 million. I want my 40 acres. I want my 5 million.
What you want, Terrence?
Everything that they owe me.
Yeah.
You ain't turning down no money or reparations or nothing else. You shouldn't.
I know.
The need is there, but like you said, when you don't know your own self-worth, and then you don't feel worthy of it. But and again, too, we could just going back to
worthy, real good, real quick and fast.
Huh?
I can start feeling worthy real quick and fast.
But even with the education assist, but like when we need to know, like I said, our self-knowledge of who we were, before slavery. Whether we get it in school or not, school ain't the only place you can learn and be taught. So
that's right.
we can't even think in terms of, okay, if we don't get it in the education, the school system, then we're gonna lose it. No, like you said, the churches, there's the families themselves. That information can be passed on from generation to generation, and we don't need to necessarily be in a classroom to do that. So I don't even think of it in those terms like, okay, it got to be in a formal education.
But a formal education was the education you got at home. We flipped that. Formal education was what Big Mama taught me.
Right.
Big Mama said, pour into those that pour into you.
Right.
Okay. So
but a lot of our kids don't have big mamas no more, Terry. That's the only problem. You got big mamas who are grandmamas at 35. So I mean,
I just want to say, big mamas are not in their 60s anymore. They're in their 30s. So they need some great big mamas. It's like big mamas. My column is a column of what my grandmother taught me. How can a woman who only made it to the 6th grade, she and I would have conversations about the UN and politics. We would have conversations about the impropriety of the past 4 presidents during her lifetime. Education happens at home. She didn't get past the 6th grade, but she educated herself through the home. She had me reading when I was 4. Okay, I was reading at 1st grade level at 4, and when I got to the 3rd grade, I was reading at 6th grade level. So we have to take control of our village.
Right.
And so we have to look at it. And our problem is not equity, it is economic. We have to learn to be our own wealth generating people, and reparations is crucial because you allowed my ancestors to build this country for free. You even gave us 40 acres of mule and then lynched us to get it back. So we
never got it. We never got the 40 acres.
Some people did, but there's a reparative action that needs to take place. It's not just money, but tell the truth. We need to know about the mother of rock and roll, that guitar playing woman that taught Elvis Presley. He gave her much homage. We need to be able to look at a regular book and see that we were there too. So reparations is not just about a check. It's about rewriting history to tell the truth. So that
Well,
when people,
they want to rewrite history, all right. They want to take the little bit that they gave us. They want to take it out. That's
well,
the problem.
there
They
you
want to
go.
whitewash it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Exactly.
And unfortunately, it goes back to what Martin Luther King said. I'm not concerned about these clannish people who are trying to kill me. What I'm concerned about is the appalling silence of the good white people.
That's
And
right.
if black people could fix racism when we were supposedly arrived in 1619, it would have been completely released and gotten rid of in 1620. You know, so everybody needs to come on board and change the racism. But we need to, like Brother Perry said there, we've lost our solidarity. We think we can be different and disagree with other people that look like us. We think that there's only one spoke on the wheel. Then no, the thing that black people need to, it's many spokes on that wheel. Someone said we need to vote. That ain't everything. We need to do all of this. You know, and if we don't maintain this momentum, the George Floyd moment won't become a movement. And so we've got to go back and say, all right, let's look at building wealth. Other than my program, I can't find any young black men who are learning how to build wealth. You know, how to own something, how to be bootstrapping entrepreneurs. You know, and I'm looking at, you know, I'm training to black men build websites, learn how to do social media, build TikTok videos. I'm not speaking for Pam, I'm speaking for myself. But us old folks need those young folks to teach us how to do TikTok. Yeah.
That's
And
right.
so when you learn how to do TikTok, don't do me a favor, monetize it and charge me. You know, we need to build wealth in our communities.
Absolutely. Latrice put this article in here about the diversity roles disappearing 3 years post George Floyd protests, and God knows that's the truth. It's just that's the real danger, because
I'm in Texas.
Huh?
I'm in Texas. You know what they're doing with diversity.
Oh, please. And we're in North Carolina, and we're hanging on. We're hanging on by a thread, fingernails. Looks like we're going to get Medicaid expansion. I don't know if it actually passed yet. Did it, Terrence?
I don't know.
It's close. It's very, 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 very close if it hasn't passed yet. So that'll be something positive on our end. But we have got to do like my home state of Michigan, kick butt, take names, and just fight and get to that voting box, and we can't wait till 2000 at the end of this year to get prepared for 2024. That's why this show exists, to keep talking about issues so that you stay woke enough to understand what's going on.
Yeah, you're right, Pam.
The little things are big things. And if I'm passionate enough to do this, and it takes a lot out of me because I'm doing 70 million other things. But the thing is, if everybody does a little bit, it becomes a big thing. You know, it becomes a big snowball. And if you all who are listening, if you share the video and what have you, it helps spread the message further. You keep spreading the message further. And you'll hear a Terrence Perry and a Terry Allen, and I will, Edwin, I'll have more men on the show.
Amen.
I'll have more men on the show. Nothing against my sisters, because they always come through for me at the 9th hour when I somebody drops off or whatever. But I just want us to just stay engaged and keep communicating with each other and keep loving on each other, because given that knowledge is the power. And
Amen.
We can easily, with a click of a mouse, send information everywhere.
And Pam, it's the small steps. This is remixing politics and culture. The politics side is we need to control our voting blocks, because for history, it is the Black people who decided who won. We take them over the top. We still do. So we need to understand that. And so when we sit down, we need to have conversations with both the right and the left. What you gonna do for us? Because when we vote, you're gonna win. And the other thing is, on the other side is, we have lost our independent production capacity. we become consumers rather than producers. And
Yes.
so we have to purchase combs that are made by us, not in Korea. And I love Koreans. My best friends are Koreans, but we have to not just our political process, but our
Right.
education processes to show us that the pharmaceutical system was built by Imhotep. Know
Yes.
that. And know that Egypt's name is Greek, but the real name is Kemet, and you are Kemetic. And that's why the basketball said to those people over and over again, I cannot be anti-Semitic because I am Kemetic. There's no way I can be anti-Semitic. He didn't pander to their threats or charges against him. He just kept repeating himself. And when you go learn what I'm talking about, you'll quit asking me that dumb question. So
Right.
we have to get to that point where we control our educational process, and that Perry's books are mandatory teachings at the church until we can get them back into the school districts.
That's
our
right.
economic situation, we spend more. It's about what we do. My sister CEO program was an ex-offender program for women. And I remember them talking
and I
about.
never knew that, Terry, all that time. I never knew that.
I remember the ladies talking about a Luther Vandross concert who was coming to town that time. And these women are in my program and they are on public assistance. And I got my little ticket up in the cheap seats. And these women who fought to put $25 to be in my program for 6 months were on the front row with $150 tickets and $300 worth of clothes. So it is not about our economic power. It's about our educational knowledge. Why would you spend that much money on a concert ticket when you can put $25 and start your own business? One lady, another poster child, she started out in our program coming off welfare. She moved to $142,000 a year in 12 months because she decided not to go to that Luther concert and invest in herself. So we have to control our narrative, control and use our political voting block to come back and do some economic and communications process. We need to show our success because you know this, Pam, success runs in our race.
That's right. That's right. We got a comment here from Miss Butler. My mom had a 3rd grade education, read newspapers, and wrote to presidents. She could hold her own speaking about politics, self-educated. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. Terrence, one final wrap up from you. We need to get your books in the churches, Terrence. Terry gave you a good idea. All the books you wrote.
Right.
Let's make it happen, Terrence.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, and then do it, but to do it. Like I said, and I mean, and that's who a lot of the organizations that I do work with, you know, church organizations, nonprofits, and so forth. So, you know, we do that. But let me also just add, just kind of backtrack a little bit regarding the pandemic and the school system. You know, those kids that were graduating during the pandemic didn't get the education that they should have got. We know they didn't. You know, school was a mess. So they still need to, like you said earlier, self-educate themselves, because even though they did pass, you know, they had to pass everybody. You know how this system works, and they did that. But those kids really got the short end of the stick when it comes to education. If they was, you know, in the 11th or 12th grade, they graduated, but they didn't really get no real schooling. So hopefully they'll get their education as they're going forward.
Right.
Because there wasn't no real schooling during that pandemic. We know that was a mess. Zoom, you know, you had class on Zoom. The kids weren't even paying attention. They had the lights off, and the teachers didn't know if they was there or not. You know, all of that. One other thing I want to add that we do. I mean, all of that was going on.
That wasn't in every classroom. My kids had incentives. If they didn't listen, they didn't get their gift cards. They didn't get their access to other stuff. So you got to give people incentives. You got to be just as creative as Zoom. I mean, Pam and I started out on Zoom. We didn't even know how to mute. We got better at it. When you get better at it, it works for you.
And the other thing, Pam, that we're doing with the men that's coming out of incarceration, and the other thing, you know, that we're fighting for, we was in the Supreme Court the other month, was to get, you know, when these guys they're coming out, being able to vote, you know, having not waiting until they got their you know, they talking about they got to pay all their penalties and fees before that. But we're saying
that came from DeSantis too. That idea.
So we you know, we trying to make sure that's eliminated to where, hey, once they've done their time, they can go out here and vote. They ain't got to wait till all these fees and penalties, because, you know, it's always something they're trying to use to keep you from being able to vote.
Right.
But we also need to make, we wanted to make the felons and them aware that, hey, they can vote. Be aware that you can, because a lot of them didn't think they still had the, the right to vote.
Right. You need to vote the judges out. You need to vote them judges out to put you in jail.
That's
we got the lobby. We got to do some lobbying and so forth to get some policies and laws enforced. That's some of the things that we got to do and keep keep pressing on, because I mean that's how you get some things changed if you're going through the legal system.
Right.
You gotta have lobbyists in place.
Okay. Well, listen, guys, our time is up. It is we're 10 minutes over. So anyway, I've enjoyed you guys. I've enjoyed the man takeover. I know that you guys will come back, right?
Thank you.
No doubt.
Get your and Terrence, that's a fact. You need to get your books in some schools or churches or something, and that needs to be some suggested reading. That's a whole nother, I guess, another marketing concept for your books.
There you go. We need to create the cultural appetite that demands your book to be everywhere it needs to be.
He's got 15.
That's good. There we go.
Like you said, you can have 100, but if you ain't got them out there, it's like throwing rocks in the dark, So
I only have one, and the former president of the United States wrote the foreword to that book, and that helped catapult it. It's all about marketing. That's why I'm in PR. So let's talk, Terrence.
I hear you. And I know a publicist.
Hey, Pam, straighten him out. Tell him there's a big difference between a PR person and a publicist. Okay.
I need all of it.
You need all of it. All right, guys.
It was nice to meet you. Nice having you on, man.
All right, let's talk, Terrence.
Okay.
All right. Pam's my best friend. So let's talk.
Same here. All right, y'all have a good evening.
All right. Thanks for watching, you guys. Stay tuned for next.